Okay, we're going to start. So if all the candidates want to come and grab a seat. I think they want you up here, like, so everyone can see you. And then hopefully there's enough room to pass if you want to use the microphone.
Without knocking the table off.
Yes. It'll be fun and exciting. All right. So welcome everybody to the English Public School Trustee Candidates meeting for wards 9 and 10. This evening is hosted by the Hamilton Wentworth Council of Home and School Associations. So for those of you that don't know about Home and School, we're a parent-driven organization that is run by parents and for parents. The goal really is simply to provide the best opportunities for each child in the school. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to give each of the candidates time to introduce themselves. So they're going to have up to 5 minutes because there's only 3 of them. They get a little more time. You can learn a little bit more about them. Yeah, you don't have to take the 5 minutes. It's totally up to you. No pressure. Tell us about your summer vacation. My good friend down here is going to keep the time. So she will give you a warning sign at 1 minute is the green, and at 30 seconds is the yellow, and stop is orange, not red, just to keep you on your toes. Okay? So is there anyone in particular? We don't have names to draw, so who wants to go? Do you want to go first?
Sure.
All right, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I opened it.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Greg Sinisak, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be running in wards 9 and 10. I'm going to answer the question, why am I running? And
Just introduce yourself.
oh,
Wait, no, sorry. Why are you running? Yeah, sorry. I thought you were answering one of the questions. That's next.
oh, okay, no, I'm not answering any of the questions. I'm just saying why I'm running for wards 9 and 10. So I've divided it into 4 simple categories. The first one is experience. The reason why I'm running is I have a lot of experience working with students and young people and school faculty. I've been a director of a camp for 4 summers, and I've worked at Big Brothers Big Sisters. I've led in-school mentoring, the men's school mentoring program there, where I've had correspondence with school personnel, and I've liaisoned with principals, vice principals, and I've got a glimpse of the school setting, so to speak. I have a lot of experience also dealing with property management. I've worked at the West End with student housing around McMaster University in a company. And that's very relevant to the school board, especially right now with everything that's going on. So the second reason why I'm running is because I care. I care about students and young people deeply. I've worked all of my working life with them in some way. And I am profoundly affected by what's going on in the school board. And I am frustrated at points. So that is the second reason why I'm running. And along with that, I see a great need in the school board, more than ever. There are a lot of things which I believe are going wrong, a lot of mismanagement, and it affects me. So I see a great need, and when I see a need, I am prompted to act and react in that way. And the last reason why I'm running is because I believe I will do very well at this. I love working with people, I love students, I love thinking hard, I love listening, I love working with people. I'll say that again because it is a great joy of mine. So I think I will do very well at serving families and students, listening well, working hard with them and fighting for them, not giving up when a whole bunch of political agenda and stuff comes at families and students. So I am really happy to be here and running for wards 9 and 10. Is there any more by way of introduction?
Just your introduction, and then we'll take questions after.
Terrific, thank you.
All right, who's up next? Stephanie? We'll go in order. Stephanie.
Reverse alphabetical. Good evening. My name is Stephanie Shields. Thank everyone. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to meet some members of the Stoney Creek community and answer their questions. I want to thank the Council of Home and School Associations for hosting the event and Joey Coleman for recording and live streaming it so the people that couldn't be here can have the opportunity to watch it from home. I have 3 children in elementary school, and I'm running for Public School Board Trustee because I believe all of our students deserve safe, accessible, well-maintained schools that offer a variety of diverse programming. The newly elected Board of Trustees this year will have a lot of challenges to face right from the start. Poor facility management, changing demographics and enrollment numbers, math scores that continue to fall, school closure decisions, bullying, transportation concerns, a flawed funding formula, and ongoing competition from the separate school board, just to name a few. But I'm excited about the future of the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board because I believe that challenges are really just an opportunity to make things better. I think that healthy, happy, well-rounded students come from strong schools that are firmly rooted in active communities. I think that our parents, teachers, and community members are a resource whose skills, knowledge, and opinions need to be utilized and validated in our decision-making process. And I believe that the Public School Board has the obligation to provide every student with the programs, tools, and resources they need to succeed. I'm confident that by working together, we can find community-based solutions to our problems, revitalize public education in Hamilton, and ensure the best interests of the students are truly the #1 priority. I'm running for the Public School Board Trustee because our students, parents, and community members need an advocate who's accessible, informed, and committed to representing their needs. I have the skills and experience to be your voice at the table, and I hope to have your support on October 27th.
Greg, obviously.
Jeff.
Oh, Jeff, sorry. Not obviously.
Obviously not.
There's only 3 of us.
To adjust the mic some, sorry. I'm obviously not Greg. Thank you to the Home and School Association for hosting this great event here in Stoney Creek this evening. And thank you for everyone who has shown up tonight. It's great to see that so many of you are engaged in public education. It's really great. My name is Jeff Beattie, and I'm running for Public School Trustee here in Stoney Creek. I'm an Orchard Park graduate. I'm a lifelong Stoney Creek resident. I'm a Stoney Creek business owner. I'm a community volunteer, and I'm a parent. I understand the importance of education. And as a parent, I know the issues and challenges that parents are facing every day. Some of the items I want to work on during the next 4 years include being a strong voice for Stoney Creek schools during the upcoming accommodation review process. I also want to work to maintain and upgrade Stoney Creek's 10 elementary and 2 secondary schools. I want to ensure that our school system is supporting those who need it the most. I don't believe our system should allow anyone to fall through the cracks. We need to make sure that our school board is working with the province to access all available funding and to work hard. I will make that happen. We need to improve communication between the board and our school communities, and that's something I want to get started on right away. I want to raise the profile of public education here in Stoney Creek. And finally, I think it's about time that our trustees started to work together effectively, cooperatively, in order to get things done and to get things done well. I thank you all again for coming tonight, and I would sincerely appreciate your support on October 27th. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go to questions now. So for the questions segment, we're going to answer each of the 3 questions, and you'll each be given 2 minutes to answer the questions. So a little different, I think, maybe than others. All right. So do you guys want to go in reverse order, or do you want to rest? It's up to you. Are you all right to go next? All right. So the first question will be, how will you be the parent-student voice at the board for your constituents?
Jody, you keep screwing with my microphone here. You're not supposed to anger the moderator, I understand.
I'm new to this, in case you didn't know.
So the question is, how will you be the parent-student voice at the board for your constituents? And as I've said in my opening, I want to be the voice for Stoney Creek schools. I think it all starts with being a good listener. By listening carefully and understanding the issues, and taking the time to fully understand the issues, you can do a lot more. I like to make sure that I have all of the facts first, and once that is done, I can figure out the best way to use my skills to work that complicated issue through our even more complicated system. I'm a collaborator, I'm a consensus builder. I use the old adage of using honey instead of vinegar to get things done. And as I found as a business owner, you need to be persistent and don't take no for an answer. That's what I would do for my school communities and my parents and the students.
Well, I gave this question a lot of thought because, a lot of trustees have a challenge in making sure that the voice of their community is heard effectively at the board. And I think the key, based on my observations of the board's dealings over the last year, is to be involved at the grassroots level of the decision-making. By the time we get to vote on an issue as a board of trustees, the decision has essentially been laid out and almost completely made. It's at the committee level where you're designing the policies and the procedures that you really get the ability to influence what gets put in front of the rest of the trustees to vote. And it's something that not all of the trustees do. You have the option of joining the backup committees. You don't have to participate in the policy committee or the program committee, but it's the trustees that do that actually get to effectively put their community's wishes on the table and make sure that the decisions and the votes that come out of those policies reflect what their community wanted. So I intend to join as many of those committees as I can possibly make time for. The Finance Committee, the Parent Involvement Committee, the Policy Committee, and the Program Committee are my main focus. Thank you.
So how will I be the parent-student voice at the board for my constituents? The first very important thing for me, and I believe also for the people, is that I am independent. I'm not a member of a political party, I'm not bought out by an organization or a group, but that I am independent. So that, in order for me to be a parent-student voice, I need to be uninfluenced by those voices that tell me to do certain things for their own agenda and their own purpose. So that's where it starts with me. The second way I would be a student-parent voice is I would work hard. I have been working hard since the beginning of September, being out on the streets, knocking on doors and listening to parents. I've been out many, many hours, and it has been great to listen, and I've been preparing for this for over a year now. I would work hard by attending meetings. I would work hard by being available. So phone call, email, whatever it is, I would work hard by being email and being respectful to be prompt in responses. And the last thing I would do to be the parent-student voice is invite you all, like you are here, to have your say. That is the whole point of it all, public school systems, to be truly public and be reflective of what the public desire and what they hope for and dream for their children. So I would be inviting you all to have your role, your rightful role in the running of the public school system, and do my part. If you do, we do each our own parts and work together at this. Thank you. Do I have to stay up here?
You should, maybe. Do you want to read the next question?
You can.
Oh, you want me to? Okay. I'll have to adjust the mic. No. How will you engage your community to build the parent-board relationship? 2 minutes.
Okay, the first way I would engage the community is by giving people hope. A lot of politicians are very frustrating, and a lot of people throw up their hands at politicians and say, what's the point in even trying? So the first way I can engage the community is by showing you that there's hope, by showing you that I'm an individual that you can trust, showing you that I'm an individual who's going to work hard, that I have integrity, that I'm not going to be sold out to any group, to any activists or anything like that, but that I will be a person who will work hard to represent you, to represent families and students, and stand with you in the struggles in schools, whether it's education, whether it's busing, whether it's school closures, whether it's the frustrating boundaries and catchment changes that cause you to have to send your children to different schools, whatever it is. That's the first way, is that I can work hard and I can do my part to show you that your voice matters. That hopefully will encourage more people to become engaged, to be interested in public schools, and to be encouraged that what they say will actually make a difference. As far as engaging too, we live in a great media culture and a communication culture. Websites are a great thing. I am very technology savvy, and keeping people informed on what's going on the school trustee end so that people know what's going on, and then also creating avenues so which people can post their information, call me directly, and keep everybody in the loop is a very important thing about keeping people engaged. I can't stress enough that it's very important to me that every person knows their voice matters, it counts. It's one thing to listen, it's another thing to hear, to take into consideration and to act upon that. So that is the first and foremost way that I will strive to give people encouragement and hope that what they say and do does affect the public school system.
There's been a lot of talk about parent and community engagement in the past couple of years, especially with all the school closure processes going on. And the board actually just recently reviewed a parent engagement policy and a community engagement policy. And it kind of made me chuckle, because I don't think policy is what drives engagement. I think relationships are what drive engagement. And I think it's important that the parents and community members and students know who to call when they have a problem. Time and time again at the door you hear about trustees that didn't respond, or superintendents that didn't respond, or principals that didn't respond. So I'm going to want to make sure that all of the people in Ward 9 and 10 know who to take their problems to, and that I will be responsive to what they have to say, and I'm going to react to what they need. I think that's the first. I think that from there, I really do want to, I agree, I think websites are an effective tool of communication. I think the board website is incredibly hard to navigate and find things on. So I would like to make sure that either through an email distribution list or through my own website, I make sure people are informed on what's going on. I mean, we had a transportation policy review over the last 4 weeks, but I doubt most people even knew how to find that on the board website. So that limits the amount of feedback that you get when you ask the public for their input on decisions. So I want to make sure I'm out there in the schools, knocking on doors, and continuing to meet the public so that they know what's going on and they're getting regular updates and the ability to give us their feedback.
Jody, thank you for the question. How will you engage your community and build that ever so important parent and board relationship? And like my colleagues here, we're knocking on doors and we're hearing a lot of, who are you? What do you do? And that in itself is very disappointing. I think one of the biggest culprits of the current relationship between the board and its communities is the perception of a very narrow channel of communication between the communities and the board, and very controlled. And I think that perception needs to be changed, and if it is a problem, which I think we can all agree it is, that process needs to be changed. It's a two-way street, the communication from the board and to the board. And we have to make sure that that pathway of communication is working properly in both directions. And it's the trustees' job, it's their duty to be at the front line and be the voice of the school. I know that as we get out into the broader community, a lot of people outside of our school communities aren't aware of what's going on inside our schools. So outside of simply communicating with the schools, we also need to use resources to get out into the broader community, to let the people in Stoney Creek know what's going on inside their schools and keep them informed and up to date also. It will go a long way to making the entire community feel engaged, and I think once that happens, we'll be on the road to good communication between everyone involved.
All right, third question. Are you ready? There have been, sorry, there have been many changes at Hamilton Wentworth District School Board. How will you help the community move forward?
Me again. Change is tough. Change affects us all at an emotional level. And I think right off the bat, as I just said, we need to start by improving communication between the board and the community and the school communities. We need to, as a board, explain ourselves and our decisions better than we're doing now. But we also need to make sure that we're listening intently to what our communities are telling us, and we don't always do that, I don't think. Overall, we need better dialogue between everyone involved. And also as a board, we need to set clear goals and objectives and explain those to the community. And more importantly, we need to explain our plan on how to get to those goals. Some people are talking about some doom and gloom and how bad things have become. I don't want to dwell on that. I'm excited for the possibilities and the opportunities, and that's the direction I want to take. That's the vision that I want to help set.
There's going to be a lot of transitions coming up over the next couple of years. The next big one to truly impact Ward 9 and 10 is going to be the beginning of the French immersion program at Sherwood Secondary School, when the lower Stoney Creek children are going to be bused one way or the other to Sherwood for secondary school French immersion. That's going to be a big transition, and that committee is just starting to meet now and formulate with all of the stakeholders how that transition is going to work. So I'm going to make sure that I'm involved in that transition committee, attending those meetings and trying to smooth that transition for our elementary students. The next big one that's coming is going to be the accommodation review that these wards are facing next year. So 6 of the elementary schools in Lower Stoney Creek will be going through an accommodation review. And I think the key to how well that review goes is going to be established in the year before it happens, in making sure those schools are informed about what the process means, making sure that they have all the tools they need to navigate it, and make sure that they're effectively communicating with each other now before the process has a chance to make them adversarial. It's a difficult process. You know, I've been through, I got very involved in 3 of the accommodation reviews that took place this past year. And the secondary reviews were difficult, but the elementary are even more so because they involve a bigger group of schools. There were 8 in the review in my home ward, and this one will have 6. So we want to make sure that we have the best outcome possible for those students, and to do that, I think we need to begin right away.
So there have been many changes at the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board, and how will I help the community move forward? First, explanations. It is incredibly convoluted at times what's gone on and how it's gone on. Unless you have 30 hours a week to spend reading and talking to people, it's easy to get lost in it all. So explanation, and also by way of explanation, simplifying things. And a website is a great tool. My own personal website is a great tool for this, to keep parents informed, students and parents informed on what's actually going on so that they can also respond to that. The second part is transparency, helping the community move forward. People don't like being toyed with. They don't like feeling like their trustee or their politician has their own political agenda and they're just pushing their own matter, and parents then are just bystanders. So transparency is very important. There's been alleged secret votes that have been part of the school system, which is appalling, and letting you know that I'm in this with you, that I am in this endeavor in the struggles within public schools and for students and families together is very important. So at least that way, with what happens, we know that you know that it's not just me doing my own thing, and you know that I am being transparent and open with you. The second really practical thing is flexibility and understanding. With all of the rigid and tough changes that are going on, I heard one parent talk to me about how one of her students has to go to Saltfleet because of the rezoning of boundaries, and her other students going to Saltfleet, and all the complications, not Saltfleet, Sherwood. Her other daughter's going to Sherwood, and because it's a different district, she's not allowed to do athletics there. How frustrating. So flexibility and understanding. When we're making tough changes, there needs to be understanding and flexibility. If one of your sons or daughters, one of your children has to go to one school, another to another school, if we can't get them in the same school, then at least some measure of understanding, like not taking athletics away from them. So in all things related to school board matters, that would be really important. I don't have any time left, so thank you.
Okay. So it says that we're doing closing remarks, but we're going to save closing remarks for the end, and we're going to go take some questions from the floor. So if anyone has a question, if they want to come to the mic here, they can ask that question. We'll give each candidate a minute. If you have a specific candidate you'd like to address it to, that's fine as well. Anyone?
Hi, I have a three-parter for all of you. Nothing hard. Don't worry. Nothing hard. And I believe Mr. Beatty answered part of it in his opening. But I was wondering what high school you guys went to, where you guys live in Stoney Creek, and if you went to college or university, what did you take?
Whatever order you guys like. Yeah.
Okay, you're just going to have to, so 3 parts.
Three parts. Which high school did you go to?
Okay.
And where do you live? Stoney Creek. And if you went to college or university, what did you take?
Okay, I went to high school at St. Jean de Brebeuf, Catholic secondary school on Upper Sherman. My oldest sister came to Saltfleet for the 4 years, but my parents were not impressed. Something about watching the Star Wars trilogy in English class or something. So after that, they sent me to a Catholic secondary school, and my other sister and I went there. Where I live in Bimbrook, just about 10 minutes from here, and I've lived there for 24 years. I was born in London, moved here when I was 4. Third question? Yes, I went to Laurier University in Brantford. I took criminology and contemporary studies. I got a double major in that. You're welcome.
I was actually raised in London, Ontario, so I attended Sir Wilfrid Laurier High School in London, Ontario. I moved to Hamilton in the year 2000 with my husband. We decided to settle here, and so I've lived in Hamilton for 14 years. I live on the Central Mountain in Ward 7. I attended university. I went to Western University, and I took business and economics was my major.
Thank you for the question. Born and raised in Stoney Creek, graduate of Orchard Park Secondary. I don't say it too loud in this building, but because of the rivalry between, anyhow, those who know. And I attended Niagara College. I took a business administration program there, and with a specialty in operations management.
Any other questions from the floor?
Living outside of the ward that you'd like to be a trustee for, why? What's the reason not being a trustee in the ward that you live?
So I decided to run for trustee after going through the elementary arcs last year with my children's school. And when I started looking at what the trustee role was and how influential the position can be, I knew that I had to run and make a difference on the other side of the table. The challenge is that if you have children in elementary school, I would be limited in what I could vote on in my home ward, because anything I voted on could be seen as a conflict of interest for where my children attend school. And I didn't want to represent a ward where I couldn't vote on every single issue on the table. I didn't think it would be fair to the people that elected me, and I didn't think it would be fair to my children's school to put them in that position. So due to conflict of interest, I decided I could not run in Ward 7. From there, I looked at which ward I thought I should run in, and I chose Wards 9 and 10 because I knew they were next to go through the accommodation review process. I knew how incredibly challenging that process could be, and I knew that I could make the biggest difference by representing a ward and already being prepared for what that process was going to bring. So I specifically selected Ward 9 and 10. I also felt an affinity for the schools of Ward 9 and 10. You know, especially the lower Stoney Creek schools. They're exactly what we wanted our Central Mountain schools to be when we went through the ARC. We wanted smaller, 300, 350, 400 pupil place, JK to 8 elementary schools, and that's exactly what you have. So I want to be part of defending that and preserving that community climate.
Yeah, sure. I'll answer. I grew up in Binbrook, but there isn't too much happening. Well, now there's a lot happening in Binbrook, but when I was growing up, there wasn't too much happening in Binbrook. So Stoney Creek is just naturally the area where I come to all the time to live life, so to speak. I've worked in Stoney Creek for pretty much all my jobs with Big Brothers Big Sisters. That was downtown Hamilton, but by far I had reaches in Stoney Creek. I've directed a camp in Stoney Creek for 4 years. I've been a Big Brother for the last 6 years through Big Brothers Big Sisters, and he lives in Stoney Creek. He's gone to Gatestone. It just felt more natural for me to go to Stoney Creek because besides actually living in a house in Binbrook, most of my interactions and where I've been working, everything has been in Stoney Creek. So it just felt more natural to do that. And there's no high school in Binbrook either, so this is the public high school that's closest to me.
So I'm the Stoney Creek resident that doesn't actually live in Stoney Creek, and I know that sounds awfully complicated, but Wards 9 and 10 compose the bulk of what was the former city of Stoney Creek, and I have the distinction of living about 6 kilometers just outside of the boundary. I feel that I'm a Stoney Creek resident. I like to say I'm the guy from the creek for the creek, and it was a matter of either running in a place like Ancaster or Binbrook, which were communities that I'm not as familiar with and I can't really relate to. I'm not a resident there, and I felt that if I was going to be true to my roots, that I needed to represent the schools in Stoney Creek. I've been in almost every single one of those schools. I'm a graduate of those schools, and I feel strongly about representing Stoney Creek.
Another question?
Hi, good evening. This is a question for everyone. Until I had children of my own, I wasn't even aware of what a school trustee was or what they did. Can you please describe to me what you think the role of a school trustee is?
Whoever wants to go first. Come on up, we'll reverse the order. It's already adjusted for you.
Exactly. The mic's already in the perfect spot for me. I think the role of a trustee, there's 2 very different levels at which trustees operate. There's setting policy, setting direction for the board. Sorry, I should be talking to you. There's setting policy, setting direction for the board. There's the different committees that we sit on that are the big picture stuff. And I think those are very, very important functions. But also, there's a level at a very grassroots place. And those are the functions where we're interacting with parents, and we're acting as one trustee that I spoke to said, we're acting as a conduit between the community and the school communities and the board. And those are just as important as the high-level functions. So 2 different areas, one job, but they're both extremely important.
The general role of a school trustee is the management of the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board. It's very large. I think it's 108 schools. The budget's about $450 million. About 80% of it is set in teacher salaries. But managing schools and to a certain extent managing personnel is the central responsibility of a trustee. And then in that management, working alongside parents and students, being representatives of them, reflecting what they desire, what their hopes and dreams are for their students, and working with that. On a more ground level, we see trustees, they have all the say pretty much in school closures, what schools stay open, what close, what properties they sell. There was a 50-year plan put out by the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board to keep properties for the future of schools, and we see the current school board selling them off like it's a fire sale and a one stab cash grab. And we're going to feel the effects of that like we have at Scott Park when you have to buy it back and you spend a ridiculous amount of money expropriating it because of poor decisions. So there's a very large management scale there. There are policies, of course. There's issues such as equity, boundaries, busing. It goes on. And then another big part, I would say, that has taken my interest is how they deal with principals in schools. Principals can set the tone for a school, and trustees are responsible for that. So that's another colossal responsibility. There's a lot.
It is a very big role, and I don't think it's terribly well understood. Obviously, we've already touched on the highlights. There is the administration aspect where you oversee the policies and procedures, and you administer the budget, and you make all of the financial decisions. You decide on the hiring and firing of the director of education. You don't directly influence the teaching assignments and hiring, but you do interact with your superintendent of student achievement and your principals quite a great deal. I think the trustee helps to set the tone of the school. I think a trustee that's involved with the schools and visible in the schools helps set the school culture and can make it a good thing or a bad thing. I do think being the conduit, being the person that the parents and community members go to is the most important role. Because if we're going to influence policy and procedures and write policies, we need to know what our parents, students, and community members need to have in those policies. We need to understand the needs of our community so we can make sure those decisions happen properly. So being a part of the community and hearing the voice of the community is the primary role that makes the rest of the role of a trustee really work.
Okay. We're good. I think, one more question? Okay, last question.
This question is all for candidates. As a parent with a couple young children that will be in the public school board for a number of years, I can kind of see some of the issues. And I'm just wondering how many children you have in the public school board yourself, and how that's going to affect with you being a trustee and your role in the trustee as well.
So I have 3 children, and they are all in elementary school. My youngest daughter is in grade 1, my son is in grade 4, and my eldest daughter is in grade 7 this year. So I have 3 very good reasons to have a big stake in the decisions that are made by the public school board. And they're the primary reason I got involved. They are impacted by programming, they're impacted by transportation policy, they're heavily impacted by school closures. Bullying has been an event in all of our schools that has impacted my children personally. So it is because I have children in school that I really believe I have a vested interest in making the decisions that are right for parents everywhere and hearing a parent's concerns. It's one of the things that I think has been most missing in our current Board of Trustees. We have a lot of long-serving trustees who should be congratulated for their years of service, but who no longer have that stake of a child in school to influence their decision-making and to keep them current in what's happening in our schools.
Thank you for the question. I've got 4 kids in the system, youngest 7, oldest 11, and I think, as Stephanie alluded to, it's influential in me being up here. I care deeply about their education, and I want to make sure that the system is responsive to their needs both now and in the future. And for all the generations that follow after them, I mean, some of the decisions that we're going to be making now will have impacts that are going to go 10, 15, 20, 25 years down the road. And we have to really be careful on these decisions and make sure that they're good decisions. As for being a parent, I think it goes without question that you have a perception that others don't have. And it can help you when you're a trustee because you know what the person on the other end of the phone is going through. You've gone through it yourself. And that will definitely be something that I think will help me to be able to relate to the parents that I'm dealing with and to help them to seek resolution.
I do not have any children, I don't have any in the public school system. I have my younger brother who's still in the public school system. He's in grade 12. The one thing I would say is that it's a fair question, what you're asking for sure. The one thing I would hope that you would give me a chance on is that not having children in the public school system does not exclude me genuinely caring for children in the public school system. I have spent my working life as a camp director or Big Brothers, Big Sisters. I've been with children in all parts of Hamilton, leading programs on the ground level and as an administrative level, and I care deeply for children and parents in the public school system. The one, perhaps, bonus you could look at too is that I am free to reflect your concerns as a parent in the public school system. This isn't a necessity, but in some ways, having my own children, I could possibly get worked up over specific issues that are reflective of them and be biased towards my own concerns in that way. This is just a possibility. I'm not making an astute judgment, but I am in that way free to be reflective of parental concerns as a whole. I am free to listen and work hard and not let a certain emotional attachment of my own influence my decisions based upon what I want and not what families and students as a collective whole want and what is best for them.
Okay, this will be the last question from the floor. The last question combined into two. The last two questions combined into one.
Thank you. I have two questions. The first one is for all the candidates. I think Stephanie already mentioned an accommodation review. I have 4 children. I'm from Lower Stoney Creek. I've got 2 in elementary and 2 in high school. My concern is, will there be an accommodation review in the Lower Stoney Creek elementary schools? What will you do to help the schools through the process? And in the meantime, what will you do to help direct funding to the poorly maintained schools? My school is a very old building, and it seems like the board's not putting any money into it because it might close someday. That's my question.
We've seen a lot of neglected infrastructure investment in all of our schools, and especially, I think, the Lower Stoney Creek area, where we're looking at schools that were built in 1955, 1960, and they really need some updating and some infrastructure. I've heard a lot of concerns about that at the door, and I think the fact that we've stopped fixing water fountains and hot water tanks because of an accommodation review that's scheduled to happen within a year is abhorrent. As trustee, you do have some control over the facilities budget. You can direct funding into the facilities management through the budget, but you can also advocate for a specific school's needs. Once you've met with the principals and the staff of the school, you can actually find ways to work with the property managers to make sure the school gets funding for essentials that are needed. I think that most areas dread an accommodation review, and I can understand why, having been through the process so recently myself, but I'm hoping that the accommodation review will be a renewal for the Lower Stoney Creek area. You've got 6 great schools. They're in great locations. They're not empty. You know, the lowest utilization rate is 77% right now, and some of them are above 100%, but we're dealing with portables and porta-packs that haven't been maintained, and we're dealing with facilities that are aging. We're dealing with a lack of programming because none of them can house a French immersion program right now because they're not big enough. I think that there's going to be some creative solutions, especially working with city partners, that will be of a real benefit to the students in Lower Stoney Creek through an accommodation review process. I think the key is to make sure the community is working together and that one school doesn't feel threatened and another school feel like they're in a superior position. The adversarial process of an ARC is the worst part, where you feel one school community is going to win and the other one is going to lose. I want to make sure that all of the students of Lower Stoney Creek win. And I want to meet with the parents in advance of the ARC being set up to make sure that we're already looking for the options that are going to be the best outcome for the students.
Could you repeat the question?
So I'm in Lower Stoney Creek, and I'm wondering, is the funding and accommodation review for the Lower Stoney Creek elementary schools? What can we do to help the schools through that process, and how can we help direct funding to the Portland K schools until they decide to build a new school or whatever they want to do?
Thanks. Okay, yes is the first answer. It's definitely coming. There's certain legal limitations upon it, but it's definitely coming. The biggest way I think I can help is I feel like this whole thing is sort of like a game, and I don't use that word very. I use that word carefully in that the way the funding works from the provincial government is very frustrating. The reason why schools are falling apart is because the way it works is if you let your school decline, then you can justify funding for a new school. The government does not support, the provincial government does not support regular maintenance and upgrading of schools. So that's why it's going that way. It's completely illogical. You don't let your house fall apart on purpose so you can rebuild it. You maintain it. So the first thing that has to happen, in my opinion, is we have to lobby the provincial government on this. There has to be a change in this, because to continue to try to work within this, we can do it, we can do our best, but it's crippling. The whole undermining foundation of this is crippling. So that is one of the first things. The other way with local schools I can help is directing funds. One idea I had was for a fundraiser, a fundraising person to be hired to go into the community and create partnerships within people. I believe people would be very happy to support the public school system, and I believe a fundraiser could do a tremendous job at that. Overall, I am committed to community local schools and smaller schools and keeping them open. It is a big challenge with what's going on and all the repairs that are needed, but we have to have some way of keeping them open, because if we close community schools, it has a devastating effect. There's approximately 500 students a year now leaving the public school system. Many of them are going to the Catholic schools, and part of it is this very reason that schools are falling into disrepair. So, in keeping local community schools open invites people to come to the community, which then every student that comes is a $10,000 paycheck from the provincial government and funding. So, it starts with the provincial government, but it's a fight at all costs to keep smaller local community schools either open and upgraded, or if it's beyond disrepair, if it's beyond the point of repair, then a new facility. We need to fight for smaller community schools and build new facilities there instead, if it doesn't make logical sense to fix it because of the negligence that has happened so far.
Thank you for your question. ARC has certainly been in the headlines lately, and not always in a good way, practically never in a good way. One of the first things that I did when I was putting together my campaign was to go out and talk to people who, like Stephanie, have been through the accommodation review process. I've talked to members of staff in schools that have been affected, parents, administrators, trustees. And not everything was done properly, but I'm confident that we can do a lot better. I think it comes down to fundamentally good communication, open, transparent communication, and at every level. We can't quietly say something to one side and quietly say something to another. It all has to be open and on the board, and the competition between keeping one school versus another, it's painful and it's emotional. We definitely have to be very, very careful when we get into things like that. As far as the maintenance issue goes, I've been to every school in Stoney Creek. Some of them haven't changed since I went to home ec and shop back at Mountain View School back in the late 80s. And it's the exact same school it was back then. And it looks like nothing's been done. And I wondered to myself, how can this be allowed to happen? There has to be something that we can do differently. And when you go from school to school to school, you see chipping paint, and you see my daughters went to Billy Green above the hill, and it's not in the ARC process. but there's pieces of siding falling off the side of the school. Like, how does this happen? There's money there to make improvements and to do maintenance. It's a matter of accessing it. It's a matter of fighting for it. And as a trustee, that would be one of the very first things that I'd be pushing for, is to put a coat of paint on some of these buildings and get some of the maintenance issues looked after. Because when you have an environment like that where it looks like it's deteriorating, it feels like it's deteriorating. And it's not the right environment that we want to set for our students to learn in.
Thank you for answering my question. My children go to Mountain View School, so I've been on parent council there for about 7 years, and my latest fight with them is to get running water in the girls' bathroom, so my daughter can wash her hands after she's been to the bathroom. School was built in 1949. That's right. Do I know if they want to find out a question or no?
If you actually want to ask, the candidates will be here for some questions, and so you can do that on your own, and then we'll, all right. So I'll just give maybe 1 minute for each candidate to do some closing remarks, and then they will be available for a little bit for any further questions or individual concerns that you might have specifically for your schools, or kind of individual questions. All right. Who wants to go first?
Thank you again, Jody, Angela, and Grant, wherever you are. There's Grant. Thanks for hosting this great event and for making the arrangements to bring the community together to hear all of us speak. And for all of you for coming, for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend. We're in an exciting time. We have an opportunity to get the school board moving in a positive and exciting direction. And I'm very encouraged by speaking to people in the community and hearing their stories. And with your support, I want to be the voice for your school. I want to be the voice of Stoney Creek Schools. I've lived here my whole life. I've attended these schools. I know their history. I know their stories. And in short, as I said, I'm from the Creek and I'm for the Creek. My work as a business owner, a community volunteer, a parent, I've gained skills through these different jobs that I can use to make things happen. I've done it before, I can do it again, and I want to make things happen. I want to make things better. So on October 27th, please vote Beatty for Public School Trustee, Wards 9 and 10.
You know, the best thing about a campaign is what I thought would be the worst thing about a campaign. It's going door to door and meeting the parents and meeting the community members. And I've been amazed by the engagement I found at the doors in Stoney Creek. Parents and community members are informed about what's happening in their schools. They're concerned about what's happening in their schools. They're talking about the teaching environments. They're talking about appropriate uses for technology. They're talking about transportation policies and boundary shifts. They're talking about programs they want their children to have access to. They're ready to work together, and they're ready to fight with their trustee to make sure their children have access to all of the tools they need. We've got a lot of challenges to face, but I think that as long as we're ready to unite as a community and we're all ready to fight for what our children need, then we have a great opportunity to make all of the Hamilton-Wentworth District School Boards better. I think that we've got inequity across the board. We've got new schools in some areas and old schools in others. We've got wards that don't have access to the programs that our children need to succeed, and Ward 9 and 10 are a perfect example of that. And I'd like to work to make sure that all of your voices are heard and all of your children get the best possible education. Thank you.
For closing remarks, I'd like to thank you, Jody, for having this, and thank you all for coming. I would ask you to consider supporting me and voting for me because I genuinely care about the students and the families in this public school system. It is a passion of mine. I'm very capable, and I love thinking hard and problem solving with this. I work hard at this. I've been working very hard at this. You might be able, I was gonna say you might be able to see a few of my signs around the streets. been working very hard at listening to people and going door to door. The last thing, which my political advisor would advise me not to say, but I'll say anyways, is that the challenges facing the public school system are very tough. It's in a very tough situation, and some would even venture to say impossible from how far we've let things slide. And the reason why I would ask you to consider voting for me is because I'm 27 years old, I'm a hard worker, I have experience, and I'm young enough to know that certain things aren't impossible. So I am dedicated to fighting hard and putting my all into this. So thank you.
Okay, so we want to, Home and School would like to really thank all the candidates for coming out tonight and taking time from that schedule. It means a lot, and we appreciate the opportunity to ask these questions and learn a little bit more about you. So anyone who has further questions, go ahead and meet up with the candidates in the lobby here is fine, and we will. Oh, actually, I'll just do a little PR for Home and School. If you're interested in learning more about the Home and School Association, we now have a website. It's on the back of your program there, so we would encourage you to check it out. And if you have a Home and School in your school, we would encourage you to come out. And we have meetings